Hey, my name is Teresa Micheletti, and this channel is called Take What Rings True. Today, I'm going to be talking about cell memory and morphic resonance. And I first learned about this from a spirit guide named Rahim when Sylvia Brown would go into trance and then go sit on a bench on the other side, and her spirit guides would come in and talk to us. So, Rahim talked about cell memory and morphic resonance and how it affects phobias and how it affects unexplained pains, unexplained illnesses. So, I'm going to be talking about that today. I want to let you know that your cells, as you probably learned in science class, your cells have a nucleus inside, and each nucleus has DNA, and that is the code for your body for whether you have blue eyes, brown eyes, hazel eyes. It's the code for how tall you're going to be, the hair color, all that stuff is written in your genes on your DNA. So that's for your physical body. But your cells also contain memories. They contain cell memories. Inside your cells are stored the memories of all your lifetimes, of all of this life. And that affects emotions, it affects memories, and it also explains phobias and unexplained pains. For instance, a toddler would hear a plane and go to the window and remark, pain, 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 because she couldn't say the L sound. And she loved pictures of airplanes. Well, that's because she had been a World War II pilot. And of course, she liked planes because she'd been a pilot before. And that was a memory that she was bringing back. I had a hypnosis client who was afraid of helicopters. And when she went to a past life, she had died in a helicopter crash. When people suddenly, all of a sudden, have memories that flood and affect them, for instance, they're 35 and all of a sudden they're afraid to cross a bridge, then that's called morphic resonance. And that kind of cell memory floods when there is either a person that you meet or a situation or place. For instance, I was traveling in the high desert. I may have told this story before. I was traveling from the West Coast over to Nevada, and we were going across the high desert. I was fine. We stopped at a dry lake, and I started crying. And I cried for at least an hour, all the way till we got to Tonopah and went down to Las Vegas. Well, I found out that I had been a Native American. I'd been captured. I'd been force marched to Yosemite, which is like over the hill from where I had been crying, and pushed off El Capitan, which is a high mountain with a cliff. So I didn't like being in the high desert. So I was crying. And I didn't know why I was crying, but it was a cell memory, a morphic resonance in this case. And it was triggered by stopping at the dry lake. Another client came to me because she lived on a big ranch. They had a big garden so that she could cook. She was self-sustaining, except that her children were concerned because she kept hoarding all this food. She would have 50 pounds of rice, 50 pounds of flour, this gigantic storage of cans and goods, even though she could make her own preserves. She had her fresh garden, and she lived on a ranch where they had chickens and food to eat all the time. Well, come to find out, she had been starved to death in her last life. So she was making sure she had food in this life. Also, People who have transplants often have cell memories flood. A teetotaling vegetarian wakes up from surgery and wants hot dogs and beer. That's because the organ that she got, in this case, it was a kidney, had the cell memory of her recipient. Not she's the recipient, the person who gave the organ to her. And the cells from his body flooded her thought, and she wanted beer and a hot dog. So, if you have unexplained phobias, unexplained aches and pains, it may be cell memory. So, as soon as your spirit enters your fetus, when you're in the womb, then your memories are brought with it and they flood into you. So, people who live next to the ocean and are afraid of water, there's usually a reason. It's usually a past life or an incident in this life. Your little brother tried to play with you in the pool and kept putting you under the water, and you thought you weren't going to be able to breathe in this life, then you're afraid of water. But it can also be a past life. Your husband went off on a ship and never came back. That's a water incident. You fell overboard on a ship and drowned. Those things are memories, and they can flood in this lifetime. It explains phobias also. I had a client who's deathly afraid of snakes. Well, in a past life, he fell into a pit, rather like the movies, he fell into a pit that had snakes in it, and there was no way for him to get out. So he's afraid of snakes in this life. Not anymore, because when we did hypnosis, we had that memory disengaged. Another friend has always had shoulder pain. Well, in a past life, a tree limb fell on her shoulder, and so she was bringing back those memories. There's a story in one of Sylvia Browne's books about a traveler who'd always wanted to go to London. He went to London, and he was riding a tour bus. And he realized about 5 minutes in that he knew what was coming. He knew around the corner was going to be a famous church. He knew that when they went down the block, there was going to be a park on the left-hand side. He rented a car and drove familiarly. I can't say that very well. Anyway, it was very familiar driving. So he took a car and he drove in this little town, which seems so familiar. And there was a house, but he knew it should be a pub. So he talked to the people in the town. And yes, a long time ago, there had been a pub there and had been transformed into a house. But come to find out in past life regression, he had owned that pub, which is why he was so familiar with it and why it had such good feelings, and he wanted it to be there. I did a past life regression on a guy who also lived in England, who loved to cook. And he went back and found his pub that he had owned and also found the cookbooks that he had written. He was an author and he wrote cookbooks in those times, and he found his cookbook from his past life. So that's kind of fun. Have you ever met somebody, or it could be a friend or a relative, that you seem to know instantly? You meet them, you feel like they've always been your friend, you feel comfortable with them, you sometimes have the same thoughts, like telepathy. It's probably because you've known them in a past life, and those memories are flooding back. It can also be the opposite way. You meet somebody and you go, ooh, I don't want to be around this person. I don't like this person. I don't trust this person. I remember when I was a minister at Sylvia's church, one of the ministers in training met a minister who hadn't been there for a while. And she said, "Well, she's very pretty." And then she came to me and said, "I thought she was very nice. And then all of a sudden I thought, I don't like her. I want to stay away from her." Well, when we did a past life regression, we found out that in her last life, she had caused the domino effect for her to die. Well, no wonder she doesn't like her. She doesn't want to die again. So when I went to Venice, I was with a friend who decided to sleep, and I went off on my own at twilight. I was not worried about where I was going. I felt so familiar with the location. I went to the fish market. Not It wasn't active at that point in time because it was late in the day, but I was just so comfortable in Venice. I love going to Venice. Well, come to find out, I was a merchant in Venice. Not the merchant of Venice, but I was a merchant in Venice. So, if you have a phobia, say you are afraid of elevators, then probably, like one client of mine was afraid of elevators, and we were on the third floor when I was doing her session. She took the stairs. Well, when she found out that she'd had an accident in an elevator in a past life, she could let that go, didn't need to hold on to that memory anymore, or at least make it affect her anymore. And on the way out of the session, she went down the elevator. She wasn't afraid of it anymore. Past life memories. You may carry a past life memory, like a birthmark. I have a birthmark around my waist in the back, and it's where a spear went into me when I was a Roman soldier. So I died in that life, obviously, but I have a memory of it in my birthmark. So if you have a birthmark, you might want to examine that because it's really a notification of a past life memory. So, another instance, people who have illnesses, like little babies who come in and instantly get cancer, often that is a past life memory that's flooding in. The body is just reacting to what happened before. People who have asthma, and the doctors are going, "You shouldn't have asthma. There's no medical reason that we can find for you having that." Well, maybe they died of pneumonia in the last life. It's sometimes people's skin diseases. The doctors can't take care of it, and you find out, well, they had smallpox or some other disease in their past life. And a lot of times those things can be alleviated by finding out what the past life connection is and letting it go. You don't have to hold on to past life stuff. Been there, done that, let it go. So, do a meditation and see if you can find out what the cause of the phobia or the unexplained pain is, or go to a hypnotist and have them, one who specializes in regression or past life regression, and see if you can figure out what's going on. You don't need to hold on to unexplained pains. You don't need to hold on to unexplained memories of any kind. So if you're afraid of snakes or spiders or whatever it is, you're afraid of planes, there's probably a reason for it. And once you know the reason and the logic of it, you can let it go. So I'm glad you came to visit today. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to do a group past life regression on June 1st at online for $12. It's going to be at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I'll put the information in the comments on YouTube and on Facebook on my Take What Rings True site. Or you can contact me at heavenlyhypnotist@gmail.com. So it'll be $12 for a week, and then it will go back up to a bigger price. So I don't know what I'm going to talk about next Wednesday, but I will be talking about something spiritual. So thank you for joining me, and See you next time. Bye.